So to the sounds of Rusty the Rooster, we're out here working on, as you guys have asked for, the 63 Galaxie 500. This week I'm going to start working toward getting that engine to possibly fire, theoretically. After we come back, we'll talk about a lot of theory.
Restoration of a classic Ford is a journey of discovery. Let Autocrafters help you with yours. We offer quality parts for Falcon, Fairlane, F-Series, Galaxie, Maverick, and Pinto. Contact us today.
All right, so what's the first order of business on this engine? One of the first things I do is I'll check the oil to make sure there's any oil in it. If there's oil in it, that's good. If it's not completely full, that's not good. If it's black, well, that's typical for something like this. Probably the last time this engine was driven, maybe 20 some odd years ago. The guy I talked to who had the car said that he knew that the engine hadn't run in about 15 years. So let's just say 20 to be safe. Somewhere back in the 2000s. Probably not a good thing. But that's the first thing I'll do is I'll check and make sure it's got oil in it. I'll also pull all the plugs out and examine the plugs. If the plugs are still wet, like if they got oil on them, then you know you've got a problem within the engine, and you're probably just going to have to go ahead and say, screw it, I'll pull the engine and rebuild it. But I was told that this engine did run. Doesn't mean it will run, only that it did. So the next thing I'm going to do after I've pulled all the plugs, made sure everything's okay, and it is okay, the plugs on here were just a little rich. All 8 of them were black, and that tells me that the engine's running very, very rich. Next up is the Marvel Mystery Oil. All right, so what I'm going to do now after Rusty gets through crowing in the background is I'm going to go in and actually throw some Marvel Mystery Oil down the throat of each one of these bores. You're not going to glug it. You're just going to put a little bit down to make sure that these cylinder bores sit for a couple of days, if you have that luxury, so that they can kind of loosen up around the ring lands, around the edges. I'm not putting a ton. I'm not putting too little. I'm just putting enough in there on all 8 cylinders. After this, at some point, I would obviously change the oil, but for an initial try to start and see if we can get it to run, I'm not going to do that. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and pop the cap on this thing so I can take a look at what I've got underneath here. I can imagine it's probably not a Protronix, and I am correct. It is a points system. So I'm going to pull my 400-mile long plug wires out of the way, and I'm going to examine the points on here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it and just hope for the best. It's really hard to get good condensers these days. Condensers can be kind of an issue because they're not well made. Bosch has the best condensers available, so you have to try to go and find a Bosch condenser. I'm going to hope that this condenser is still in good condition and reuse it. I'm also going to reuse my rotor and my cap because they don't look like they're in too bad a shape. They're in a good enough shape to run. These points are a little disconcerting though because I can see some junk on the actual points themselves. That makes me a little worried about what we've got going on here. I may or may not try to take these out and just clean them up and use them to initially get it started and then replace those down the road if necessary. Well, they will be necessary. All right, I am a little concerned about this coil because it's pretty rusty and nasty. It may be just fine, but I'm going to probably pull a good coil into this, and I'm going to take the coil off the F100 because that coil is a known good running coil. So that'll be in here to replace this one for me to do my testing to make sure we got something good. Now, the thing you want to keep an eyeball on is things like this. This is a mechanical oil line that they were using for running a mechanical gauge inside the car at some point, and it is, well, it's not there. So you're going to want to watch out for it. If it's got decent oil pressure, this thing's going to start spewing oil everywhere unless you figure out a way to cap it off. So when you're working on things like this and you're trying to make one start up, always look for old junk like that that could be a real problem. I'd like it better if I had a regular pressure gauge on there that I could put an electrical gauge on, but I don't, and I don't think I've got a mechanical gauge I can throw on there, which would be nice to have. So those are the things I'm going to do at this point. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about fueling and oil filters. All right, so fuel pump and oil filter. Fuel pump, I'm going to cut both lines off of it. Those lines are hard as a rock. Those rubber lines shouldn't be like that. And I don't want to be pulling any fuel into the engine from that fuel pump that's been sitting there for gosh knows how long. I don't even know if the diaphragm in there is going to work. It may not even do anything. It may just die right there whenever we try to start it. So we'll be running a system that we run on our other cars. We have a little fuel pump that we use with an electric motor on it and an outside gas can that we're going to put in here and run with it. I will probably change out the oil filter, put a little bit of fresh oil in the filter just to make sure that that's in good shape, and we've got a good clean setup there on the filter itself, because you don't know how long that thing's been in there. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about carburation. I always grab a different carburetor when I'm doing this, a known good functioning carburetor. Again, I may sacrifice the carburetor off of the F100 to put on here just to run it, just to see if it'll go, because we know that carburetor works, we know it goes down the road, and it'll bolt up on this manifold. This carburetor is in pretty crap shape. It's a good carburetor because I like kind of the fact that it's a manual choke, so I wouldn't mind keeping the manual choke on there, but it won't, if you push the accelerator, the accelerator actually pushes nicely and it's not a problem, but the problem is over here, the accelerator pump is locked up on there. It's not even moving. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the distributor off of here and actually grab a quarter socket on a drill motor and see if I can get this thing to pull up some oil pressure as far as getting oil up to the rockers on probably the driver's side valve cover, since all the bolts are missing off of that valve cover. I'm not sure whose fault that is. I don't know if that's something I did or something the former owner did. But it's been done, so I gotta, do something with it. So let me go grab some tools. We'll get going on that. All right, now, on some 390s, this isn't an issue, but if you had air conditioning on this engine, you will want to have that kind of distributor wrench right there. There are other distributor wrenches that are available on the market right now, and I'll tell you what, they suck. They're not that great. What you're looking for is the VIM 106 distributor wrench, or if you can find one of these old Craftsman ones, and honestly, the part number is a little hard to see on mine, but you can go out and find them on eBay. They are popping up here and there because guys my age and older that have these things are dying off like flies. This is so, you have to go out and find them on eBay. Sometimes you can find them at estate sales. Right now, the VIM number is not available. I've seen it say out of stock, but it's been permanently out of stock now, I know of, for at least 2 years. So just kind of keep that in your mind when you're going out and looking for these things. But the next thing I'm going to show you is how you need to set this up and get it ready for you to take the distributor out so you can get the oil pump driven. All right, so I'm going to take this bolt out, and boy howdy, this could take hours. And like I said, if the AC compressor, the stock style especially, is right here, there's not a good way to access that bolt. And it's just, you got to fight it coming out. Not fight it, but it's just, it's not as easy as you'd want it to be. All right, I'm going to pull this off, set it upside down right here for right now, and what I'm going to do is take that and put it aside because you don't want to lose these. These are, not that hard to find, but hard enough to find. All right, now what I've done before I set up all of that is I went in and I marked the center shaft on the distributor all the way down the center shaft to the top plate, the breaker plate for the distributor itself before I start to try to pull this thing out. I'm also not going to pull it out until I can get something in there and kind of sweep around inside that hole so that all that crap from the squirrels and God knows what all, I don't want that getting down inside the engine and making it any worse than it already is. So I'm going to take that and get that wiped out of there. When you're doing this kind of stuff, be careful, because if there's mouse droppings all over the top of the engine, that can carry a virus that can kill you dead. You don't recover. So you might want to just be careful about using an air blower or anything like that on there, because you could end up getting yourself a face full of hantavirus or whatever it's called, and ain't gonna live virus, whatever it's called, you can get it and it could be bad for you. So let me go get something to wipe that out of there, and then we'll take this distributor out. All right, I've got that really pretty much cleaned out. Now the nice thing I'm seeing right now is that this distributor is pretty mobile. It's not tight in the bore. If you run into a tight in the bore situation, you may have a problem getting the distributor out of the car. Looks like we're pretty good. So I'm going to take our lead here off. Take off our high-tech vacuum hose that's cut unevenly. And we have a kitty in the background telling us how the world works. Life is good. Okay, so I'm going to try popping this thing out of here. That's one of the problems you can run into right there is this distributor shaft. Oh, nope, I thought it was distributor shaft. It's not caught on there. Good. All right, I'm going to take and look at this distributor, just inspecting it to see how the gear looks. The gear is, it's a little worn, but it's actually not too bad. It's definitely serviceable, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. Inside the lifter valley is kind of trashy, but that's really not as much of an issue at this point as it could be. All right, what I'm going to be using is this. Now, this was an old Cobalt extension set that I had. This is an extension I had in the house already, and this is one from Cobalt that came with a quarter drive on the end of it. I really like this because this sucker's not coming off. You may have the shaft come separated, but you'll note I put some electrical tape on here. If you don't have something like this, you can stick a 1/4-inch socket on the end of here and tape it up with electrical tape, and it should work just fine to do what you need to do. All right, I'm on the drive oil pump, so I'm going to now go ahead. I'm going to pull my valve cover off. Now I've already taken the bolts off. Actually, I don't think I did. I think they were already loose. Inside the cylinder heads, there's a little bit of trash, but overall they look pretty clean. Oil was fairly well maintained. There's a little bit of grubbiness in there. Probably if I wanted to throw some diesel or something in this thing, it would make that better. I'm going to just go with the oil that's in the engine. Put this on here. The only problem I have with this is that sometimes these shafts, because there's nothing for the chuck to catch on, will spin. So we'll see. So I'm trying to remember which way the oil pump runs. I think it's clockwise. Nope, must be counterclockwise. But I may have pushed all the junk out of the screen. Oh, there we go. Let's piston oil somewhere. All right, we're already getting oil coming out of this tube, which that's, I guess, good. I'm not seeing anything in the lifters yet, but that's going to be a little hard to see because of the sled rockers that this runs. I'm gonna take care of that because I'm going to get oil all over the ground if I don't, and I don't want to contaminate my environment any more than I have to. But we do have, seems like pretty decent oil pressure out of this thing. Let me go cap that off if I can, and then we're going to continue trying to get some oil up into the lifter valley so we can see what we've got here. So, more repairs to things that I'm going to break later. All right, so I am going to continue this now. I've got that hopefully taken care of with a little bit of a, just a cutoff valve, if you will. Yep, you start seeing oil coming out of some of these ports. Unfortunately, like always, my battery just died. Because you know. All right, I'm going to leave that on there and I'm going to go get another battery. And before you tell me I should buy new batteries and all that stuff, yeah, I get it. And I should use a quarter drill, but I'm out in the middle of nowhere. So I have to go get another battery. It's just the way it goes. New drill motor. I'm not getting full oil pressure out to all of the top end. I'm a little concerned about that, but this should have given me enough to get oil pressure to the mains and put a little bit of oil on those so that we could try to crank this thing over by hand. At least that's my theory. I'm going to put the distributor back in, don't need to show you that, and then I'm going to go ahead and hand crank the engine and then put the plugs back in the engine after that. I'm not going to show you that either. And I'll get everything dressed out so that we can try to hopefully fire this thing off, and I will be replacing the carburetor with another carburetor. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I've let this thing sit overnight with some Marvel Mystery Oil in the cylinders. I'm ready now to try to turn it over by hand with a wrench. I want to do that so I can hear if there's anything else going on with this thing, because you just never know. This is a 4-speed car, so there could be problems with the clutch. There could be all kinds of things going on. So I'm going to go ahead and hand crank it. That didn't sound good. It does move. That honestly doesn't sound like an engine problem, though. It almost sounds like either a starter that's the Bendix is stuck out on the flywheel, or possibly a problem with the clutch inside of the bell housing. It doesn't sound like it's coming from in here. It sounds like it's coming from back there. Ears are your next best friend in this kind of stuff. I'm trying to take it through another rotation here. This is a 15/16 bolt. Some of the pinking and clinking you're hearing is actually just the wrench running into the fan blades. We'll go through another rotation. The engine is actually rotating fairly okay. Got something striking. I guess it's just the fan blades. Yeah, that's just the fan blades hitting the wrench. I think we got a problem. But it's not a problem with the actual engine. It's actually a problem with the clutch assembly, which means that we won't be able to start this thing up without a heck of a lot of racket. It could cause the clutch to break free and not be a problem, but I'd be willing to bet it's going to end up just cataclysmically wrecking things behind the engine in this car. So I was hoping to do a start and run video next week, but like all things on this channel, that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes, reassess, and close this thing out. So, to the scintillating sounds of Rusty the Rooster cawing at the world, or crowing, whatever he's doing, we hit the windshield. And I am not going to be able to do the next video, which we're going to do a startup video. That's not going to happen. So I think it's probably a Bendix problem on the starter, the Bendix sticking out, or a clutch pressure plate issue. Because when I pushed the clutch in, when I bought the car, it went straight to the floor and it stayed there. That's never a good sign on a car. Just trust me. But what is a good sign is to actually go out and support us on Patreon. Patreon is how I pay Andrew, my camera guy, who allows me to do this kind of stuff. He also is my editor, and he comes in here and edits. And I have told Andrew that this is not a government institution, that we have to actually be able to pay him with real money that either people send us or we make from people. It's not like the government. You can't just make money. I mean, you can, but you shouldn't, because then you get in trouble with counterfeiting and all that kind of stuff, and you go to jail. So, not a good thing to do. But all these people going up by me here, I'm just going to do this. Yeah, Andrew's pointing to this side of me. These are the guys who put their money where their mouth is, and they support us on a monthly basis. Go check out Patreon. It's a good thing to do to help us and help Andrew. Mostly it helps Andrew and the kids that come in on Saturday. I'm going to do no more on that. Talking about subscriptions, though, do subscribe to the channel. We're on our march to 100,000 subscribers. We're getting really close. We're at 90-some-odd thousand right now. A guy wrote in and said he subscribed his grandmother, and now she's running around the house cussing and acting a fool. And, well, I'm just going to tell you right now, buddy, that's how Grandma probably always was. We just brought it out in her so she'd bring it out to the surface. So now you know what your grandma's been like all along. Finally, be kind to each other, be good to each other, love on each other. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on down the road. I can't show you what I just did, but you know. It sucks. We are so close. Shut up, Rusty. We are so close. That might have been Rupert. And it's like something else. It's just that one more thing. Why couldn't it have just spun like it did, but without all the noise, racket, and bumpy things going on? Why? I don't know. Go home. It's a great day. Plow a field. Dance with your neighbors. I don't know.